Things went badly for one rock and roll band. Visit the terrifying last minutes of Lynyrd Skynyrd. This is a story about giddy highs, jaw-dropping lows, and the strange afterglow of a flight that ended in tragedy. Keep an eye on this space to the story that no one told that shook the music business to its core. Jacksonville, Florida is where the American rock band Lynyrd Skynyrd got its start. Bob Burns played drums, Larry Jumstrom played bass guitar, Gary Rossington played guitar, Alan Collins played guitar, and Ronnie Van Zant sang lead. The group was formed in 1964 and was called My Backyard. Before deciding on Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1969, the band toured small places for 5 years under different names and with different lineups. The band's first record came out in 1973. By that time, they had chosen a band with Leon Wilkeson on bass, Ed King on guitar, and Billy Powell on piano. Burns left in 1974, and Artemis Pyle took his place. King left in 1975, and Steve Gaines took over in 1976. As the band rose to fame in the 1970s, songs like Free Bird and Sweet Home Alabama helped spread the Southern rock style. The band's career ended quickly on October 20, 1977, when their hired jet crashed, killing Van Zant, Steve Gaines, and backup singer Cassie Gaines. The other members were seriously hurt. 5 studio records and 1 live album have been put out by the band. Lynyrd Skynyrd got back together for a reunion tour in 1987, with Ronnie Van Zant's brother Johnny Van Zant as lead singer, along with Rossington, Johnny Van Zant, and Ricky Medlock, who helped start the group and wrote songs and recorded with them from 1971 to 1972. Before coming back in 1996, they went on to tour and make music. Over the years, other original band members have died, either before or after they were in the group. In January 2018, Lynyrd Skynyrd announced their goodbye tour, which they planned to last until 2022. The band was still working on its 15th song when Rossington died in 2023. After that, none of the original members were still with the group. 100 Greatest Artists of All Time list from Rolling Stone magazine in 2004 ranked Lynyrd Skynyrd at No. 95. Lynyrd Skynyrd was added to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on March 13, 2006. As of 2023, the group had sold more than 28 million songs in the U.S. Alan Collins got his first guitar in 1963. He then joined a band in Jacksonville, Florida, called The Mods and played in it. J.R. Rice and Larry Steele were both in The Mods. At the start of 1964, Ronnie Van Zant joined a neighborhood band called The Squires. He quickly changed the group's name to Us. In a neighborhood battle of the bands that year, we beat The Mods and won. Lynyrd Skynyrd played a show at the Greenville Memorial Auditorium in Greenville, South Carolina, on October 19, 1977. This was 2 days after their album Street Survivors came out. They got on a Convair CV-240 plane and flew to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the next day to play at Louisiana State University. The fuel ran out just as the flight was about to end. The pilots saw that the plane was getting low on fuel, so they tried to get to Macomb Airport, which is about 16 kilometers, 10 miles, northeast of the final crash site in Emmet County, Mississippi. They knew right away, though, that the plane would not make it. They tried one last time to make an emergency landing in a wide field about 270 meters, 300 yards, from where the plane finally went down. At about 6:52 p.m., the plane went over the top of the tree line for about 100 yards, 90 meters, before hitting a big tree and breaking apart near Gillsburg, Mississippi. Their best efforts failed. Lead singer Ronnie Van Zant was sleeping on the floor with a pillow early in the trip. He had been up most of the night before and needed to rest. A few of the other tourists played cards during their break. After a while, the passengers figured out something was wrong. Drummer Artemis Pyle remembers that when he went into the flight deck, the scared captain, Walter McCreary, told him to turn around and tighten his seatbelt. The people on the plane sat there in silence, and some of them were praying because they knew how bad things were. Gary Rossington, the guitarist, remembers hearing what sounded like hundreds of baseball bats hitting the fuselage as the jet started to hit trees. The sound was getting louder and louder until Rossington passed out. He woke up later on the ground with the plane door on top of him. The piano player Billy Powell got serious cuts on his right leg and a lot of cuts on his face. During the crash, his nose was almost severed. He talked about the last few minutes of the flight on a VH1 Behind the Music show many years later. He said Van Zant, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was violently thrown from his seat. and died right away when his head hit a tree as the plane broke apart. The autopsy results were posted on the band's website in early 1998 by Pyle, the drummer, and Van Zant's wife, Juby Van Zant-Jenis. They had both disputed and supported parts of Powell's story. Pyle was able to get away from the scene of the accident and call a friend, even though his ribs were hurt. Everyone in the band died in the accident that killed Van Zant, Steve Gaines, his sister Cassie, backup singer Dean Kilpatrick, assistant road manager Dean McCreary, and first officer William John Gray. Most of the people who were still alive were sitting near the back of the plane. The survivors, who were all seriously hurt, were seen at different hospitals, so they were not told right away about the deaths. In the case of Rossington, his mother in the hospital did not tell him about Van Zant's death for a few days. Cassie Gaines was very afraid of going in the Convair, so she would have rather taken the band's crowded equipment truck. But on October 20, Van Zant talked her into getting on the plane. One of the three backup singers for the band, Jojo Billingsley, the Honkettes, was not on the plane because she was getting medical help from a doctor in Senatobia, Mississippi, for health problems caused by drug abuse. Billingsley planned to join the trip again in Little Rock, Arkansas, on October 23. She said she had dreams about the plane crash and that she begged musician and original member Alan Collins not to go any further with the Convair. Since the band members liked drinking and fighting, their former bassist, Ed King, later said that he always knew it wasn't gonna end well for the group. Yet he never thought it would end the way it did, and he remembers how sad he was when he heard about the crash. It turned out that Aerosmith's flying crew had looked at the same plane before for possible use in their Draw the Line tour, but it was decided not to go through with it because neither the crew nor the plane was up to par. Aerosmith's assistant chief of flight operations, Zump Bucher, told how he and his father saw pilots McCreary and Gray drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels while they were checking out the plane. When Aerosmith's traveling family heard about the tragedy, Steven Tyler and Joe Perry were shocked because they had pushed their managers to book that particular plane for their tour. Plans called for Lynyrd Skynyrd's terrible flight on October 20, 1977, to be his last on the Convair. "We were flying in a plane that looked like it belonged to the Clampett family," Pyle said. The band had thought that since they were one of the biggest rock bands in the world, they should have a better plane. The band planned to buy a Learjet to replace the 30-year-old plane when they got to Baton Rouge, because everyone in the inner ring of the band thought it was way past its prime. To get to the people who needed help, rescuers had to dig through a thick forest, cross a 20-foot wide, 6-meter deep creek, and free cars that were stuck in the mud. People in the area helped rescuers and drove patients to the hospital in the back of pickup trucks. One person in the area remembered, "I found someone on the ground alive. When I crossed the plane, I ran into someone else." Another person from the area thanked everyone for their help and said some of them were out on that highway directing traffic. Some of them bought trucks and went back to their homes. "My wife was at home on a CB radio. I'm 10 miles away, but I can send her notes over the CB." The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, took the starting magneto of the right engine apart, looked at it, and tested it after the crash. The NTSB found that there were no mechanical or electrical problems with the starting magneto on the right engine. The check also found that all fuel dump and cross-feed valves were closed. Billy Powell and other witnesses said they saw flames coming out of the right engine of the plane while it was in the air a few days before the tragedy. The NTSB later found that the crash may have been caused in part by an engine malfunction of undetermined nature in the same engine. Years later, in an interview with Howard Stern, Pyle said that the pilots had forgotten to check the gas tanks by hand before takeoff, and that the older plane's fuel gauge was known to not work properly. The toxicology results from the bodies of neither pilot did not show any signs of alcohol or other drugs. There was crew inattention to fuel supply as the main reason for the crash in the end. According to the investigation into the accident, the plane was owned and run by L&J firm, but Lynyrd Skynyrd's production company was given a lease. As the operator, Lynyrd Skynyrd was in charge of keeping an eye on the pilots and making sure they followed the rules. The flying crew was hired by a third party and had a 3-week lease. To end the analysis, the question, how does the system protect a lessee who is unaware, either on purpose by accident or because he is careless, is asked. According to the story, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, is going to court against L&J Company over the operator's responsibility. It was just 3 days before the accident that the band's 5th studio album, Street Survivors, came out. There was a picture from the record cover next to the band. It was written on the back of the sleeve at first, but after the plane crash, MCA changed the picture to a new cover with the band on a black background. A Lynyrd Skynyrd themed oak tree has been cut down at the crash site and is now being used as a tribute for fans, rescuers, and survivors. A monument was also built there by survivors and rescuers to remember the tragedy that happened 20 years ago. Family members of those who died in the crash and band members who are still alive sued to stop the movie Street Survivors. 2017. The true story of the Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash from being made or coming out. After the crash, survivors are said to have taken a blood oath that they would never use the name Lynyrd Skynyrd again in order to make money off of their bad luck. This is what caused the debate.